1953, and a large number of hometown folks made the trek to County Stadium to salute the local star who became a big leaguer. Elkader's Jack Dittmer made his Major League Baseball debut on this date in 1952. And that's Iowa Almanac for June 17th. Until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Stein.
Divine Intervention is online at yourfortdodge.com, on Twitter at jmike1400.
That's right. We're broadcasting live from the Blue Ribbon Pelham Water Studio here in downtown Fort Dodge at 2nd Avenue North and 10th Street. I caught an interesting piece this morning from the Washington Post. And if you know it's in the Washington Post, it's the truth because it's owned by Jeff Bezos. You believe how much money this guy has? The Washington Post was going to go bankrupt, essentially, and Bezos came in and saved it with all his money and turned it into, yes, an angry, indignant, self-righteous, preachy left-wing newspaper, in which it really it had always been. Admiral Michael Gilday, name's not a household word, I know, but Admiral Michael Gilday is Chief of Naval Operations. Okay, this is a big job. He has recommended his sailors read a book by Ibram Kendi. Now, some of you who read this sort of literature know who Ibram Kendi is. The book is entitled How to Be an Anti-Racist. Now, before you start jumping off a building, I had racial sensitivity training 50-some years ago when I was in the military. And the reason we had it is because there were so many fights or attacks or whatever you want to call it between whites and blacks at camps all over the place. As a matter of fact, on a Navy ship way back in the day, there was a mutiny by black sailors. And the reaction of the Navy and the military in general, of course, was to try to bring some understanding between different ethnic groups. I hate to say different races because we're all humans. We all belong to the human race. Some of us are black, some of us are white, some of us are Asian. And I don't get the Asian violence. I really don't. And this is what I don't get about it. A lot of the attacks on Asians, brutal attacks on Asian women, are coming from African Americans. And I don't get that. I mean, not all of them. There's some dumb white people in there that are just brutalizing these poor ladies. And in more than that, but older men. Older men and women is who they're attacking. In other words, people who can be defenseless. I mean, the men are even older people, and they're just getting clocked out of nowhere. Somebody walks up to them in the street or walks by them in the street, and they just smack them. It's insane. I don't know why that is, but we're going to circle back to it, okay? Anyway, Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, argues capitalism and racism are interlinked, which is an idea I've kicked around in my head a few times. The idea of equity will not happen as long as we have capitalism. We will not actually have equality, any sort of equality in our country or the world with doctrinaire free market Milton Friedman capitalism. It's impossible. Of course, Nancy Pelosi and all these other people are always saying that they're capitalists. I doubt it. I really do doubt it. I don't, their policies tell me something else. What is that group I joined on Facebook today? Commie liberals talking gibberish. Yeah, I think it was. There's a Facebook page for you. Commie liberals. commie liberals babbling incoherently or something like that. I don't know. It's a great one, though. Younger people have a wicked sense of humor online. Too bad we can't have it in public anymore. Anyway, Admiral Gilday was confronted with some ideas in the book. Now, Admiral Gilday began arguing transparency and open dialogue, which I agree with. Admiral Gilday went on to say there is racism in the Navy just as there is racism in our country, all granted. And the way we are going to get out of it is by being honest and not sweep it under the rug. I don't think so. I think we're going, I would disagree with the Admiral. We're only going to get past racism. And until we're all one race, until we intermarry or have children back and forth, I don't have much faith in the idea that some programs from Joe Biden or whoever are really going to do it as far as equality is concerned, because equality is impossible in a capitalist society. Do you want capitalism or do you want equality? Because the two things are not interchangeable. Now, I don't think it's communist to suggest that. But I shouldn't say Mr., but the Admiral is apparently in favor of woke ideology. There are quotes from the book by Ibram Kendi. It's a fairly simple name to say, but I guess I'm getting old because I keep messing it up. The Admiral was accused by Ted Cruz, of course, of advocating for a woke, emasculated military. A woke, emasculated military. And really, I think that's the goal. I don't think Admiral Gilday understands that or accepts it, but that is the truth of all of these different movements, which are based on lies. Yes, like Black Lives Matter, critical race theory, all of these things. It's nothing but nonsense designed to tear down our culture. That's all it is. Are you a mother with her son? He's the enemy. Didn't you know that? He is your sworn enemy. There is no doubt that your own son, because he's a white male, is the enemy. Didn't you hear these people in Washington say that the biggest threat to national security is white supremacy and white supremacist groups? Let me tell you something. I know something about these groups. They're mainly a bunch of yahoos who like to take their ARs out in the woods, get drunk, shoot their guns. Every now and then they take themselves too seriously and go to Washington and storm the Capitol. But again, where were the police? Where were the liberals in charge of Washington, D.C. who allowed this to happen? Where were the liberals? The liberals in Washington, D.C. And make no mistake about it, liberals control the federal government. That's what the Democratic Party is for. They're not for real change. Look around you. Those of you who have lived in Fort Dodge a while, look around. We've had Democrats in all the important offices, the city offices and the county offices. And the reason those Democrats are there leading those organizations is so they can hire other Democrats and get other Democrats maybe elected to city council or over here on the board of supervisors or all over the place. That's all they're there for. It's an public office in public employment is really controlled by liberals everywhere, including in Fort Dodge. It's not as bad as it used to be. I remember Willie Patterson, when he was running for mayor, he told me the obvious. He was running as a Democrat. Now, I'll tell you, Willie Patterson was not really a Democrat. He was a Republican businessman. He was proud of his accomplishments, and I think he should have been proud of his accomplishments. I know where he came from. I know what he went through. It was my pleasure to talk with him on a number of times. And he was a tough, hard-nosed businessman with a heart of gold. Willie Patterson had a heart of gold. He really did. If you got on his bad side, whoa. But I know he was out the high school fixing a boiler on Christmas Eve. He was on the school board then. Somebody had to do it. He didn't want to get one of his men out there. That would be wrong, taking one of his men from their Christmas dinner with their family, so Willie went. And I could repeat stories like that over and over again. Some of his business competitors hated him because they thought he was trying to move too much business to mid-states and all that sort of thing. And he might have. I think that's unusual in politics. And I don't blame him for being angry. But overall, I thought Willie Patterson was a fine man. He was an old school Ford Dodger. He said flats in a way that irritated the sensitive. But that's the way he grew up. I mean, he wasn't trying to be, to my mind, insulting, and there was nothing racial about saying the flats as far as he was concerned. As a matter of fact, we were just talking with Sherry Washington a short time ago about the Juneteenth celebration coming up on Saturday, starting at 11 o'clock, by the way, down at Meriwether Park. And Sherry was saying, and for those of you who don't know, Sherry is a black woman and an advocate for people everywhere. But she said the only reason she never considered flats a racial name. She never considered flats a racial name. Go back to the Ustream or the StreamYard if you want to and see what she said, because that's a lot. If you were a black person for Dodge, you lived in the flats because the ground was flat. Like a lot of places, as we head down toward the river, the land slopes off and gets flat. Ergo, the flats. The railroad yard was down there. And of course, a railroad yard and railroad employment brought a lot of black people up here from Meridian, Mississippi. That's where, if you talk with a lot of old Ford Dodgers, black people, they trace their ancestry back to Meridian, Mississippi. The railroad, back in the early part of the 20th century, and I'll get Roger Natty in here one of these days to talk about it. The railroad was one of the few companies that would hire black people, and they paid good wages. They paid their black employees the same as, and they were way ahead of their time. They paid their black employees very similarly to their white employees. So I've been to Mississippi. Wow, was it racist when I was there 50 years ago? And it was even more racist and terribly racist. And boy, you talk about Black Lives Not Mattering. That was Mississippi in the 1930s. A lot of people just wanted to get out of that. A lot of black people just wanted to get away from all that. By the way, I've read a lot of Ernest Gaines. Ernest Gaines is a great black novelist. He's deceased now. But I would urge you, he was a novelist extraordinaire, and he wrote about Mississippi and Louisiana of his youth. And it was a scary place for black people. Very scary. Anyway, black people came up here to get good jobs with the railroad. A lot of them did. And get away from Mississippi. And that was enough. So nobody complained then about the name of the flats because it didn't mean anything. Like I told Sherry, though, Pleasant Valley sounds a lot better than flats. It sounds like something nasty. And I don't know why. I don't know how that happened. So I usually almost always say Pleasant Valley. But I'm a little confused why the flats, which was just another neighborhood in Fort Dodge, and a place to go late on Saturday night or early Sunday morning, if you know what I mean. Why that got to be such a bad name. By that, I meant you could go down to Pleasant Valley Saturday night after the bars closed, and you could still party down there. Some of you older folks remember that. I had a good time. I just don't remember it. This is AM 1400 KBFT, the voice of Fort Dodge.
Divine Intervention is online at yourfortdodge.com, on Twitter at JMike1400.
Okay, let's have a look at the